Right, so as we heard just now, the World Bank has been warning that the global economy is dangerously close to a recession next year. The IMF is also expressing similar concerns. However, amid these concerns of global economic recession, many economic institutions are projecting that Asian economies will still record positive growth this year and the next. The ASEAN +3 Macroeconomic Research Office have even upgraded their economic growth projection for the ASEAN from 5.1% to 5.3% this year. Indonesia is also projected to grow by 5.2% this year. Now, meanwhile, the World Bank is also projecting Asian countries to grow much higher compared to the economies of the US and the European Union. Collectively, the World Bank is projecting East Asia and Pacific countries to grow by 5.3% next year, while the US and the EU is projected to only grow by 1.1% and 0.5% respectively. So is Asia really safer from a global recession? To discuss more, we are joined by economic analyst Janita Chirath, who is joining us all the way from Dubai. Hi, Janita. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, hello. I think mainly we are in a situation where the countries all around the world are facing the after effects of the policies that were implemented due to the COVID pandemic. There was fiscal stimulus and monetary stimulus, and to ensure there is a robust recovery along in almost all the world. All the countries need this. But now we are feeling the after effects of that. Inflation is there, and unemployment is a little bit triggering in certain areas like US and Europe. But I don't think this is a global economic crisis per se. I think this is more to do with US and Europe than Asia. This is for two reasons I'm saying this, because one is Asia, most of the leading Asian countries, India has the leading population and the leading labor force in the world as of now, and then even Indonesia has a leading domestic economy and the fourth largest population in the world is in Indonesia. I think that is their biggest strength. That is Asia's biggest strength. The trade, the global trade, the external sector, the foreign sector, the export sector. So these are the strengths, and this leverage has to be used by the Asian economy to sustain any recession, any impact from recession that could fall on Asia due to the Ukraine war and due to the European crisis. And you know that Great Britain is also going through a tough time. But I think Asia can stay strong. Asia can face this global economic crisis because of the strength in the external sector in Asia's foreign accounts, in most of the dominant economies. But I'm making this statement with certain reservations, because there are some Asian countries which have an unsustainable level of foreign debt. For example, Sri Lanka and Pakistan. So these are exceptions, because their foreign debt is so high, and the installments, the debt servicing is so high. So because of that, they are facing with multifarious difficulties and recessions. But these are unique cases when we analyze the global situation, global economic situation.
Okay. So in terms of these unique cases, you're talking about some particular Asian countries that might be more vulnerable. Can you just explain which ones they are? And does that mean that, for example, Southeast Asian and ASEAN countries will not be vulnerable at all, but which Asian countries, though, will be vulnerable? Janita.
Yes, as I mentioned the names, I think already it's all over in the news globally. Now we know that Sri Lanka is going through a tough time, but now onto a recovery phase with the assistance of IMF. And Pakistan also had an external imbalance, especially in their balance of payments, and they were proactive and went into IMF support before Sri Lanka. The problem was with Sri Lanka was that Sri Lanka didn't go and seek IMF support on a timely basis. Had they done that on a timely basis, the story would have been different. But when it comes to Southeast Asia, it's different, because as I said before, they have a large labor force, especially a country like Indonesia has a large labor force under their deployment, and the domestic demand, the internal demand is so high. And that could, if they make innovations and drive the technological sector, the digital sector, I think the Southeast Asia has the strength, with the strength in the foreign accounts, with the strength in the balance of payments. I think that Southeast Asia has the strength of sustaining any implications of a global recession. So this is the current overview that I see. Basically, yes.
On Indonesia, and particularly for next year, because as we know, as we heard just now before we began our conversation, the World Bank is, they're projecting a global wide-scale recession next year. Now, the IMF said that Indonesia is a bright spot, among the other countries amid this global economic uncertainties. So talk to us about next year, about 2023. Do you think that the Indonesian economy will remain resilient and fend off, a global economic recession?
Yes, that's a very good question, because we need to go back and look at 1998. Because Indonesia in 1998, when the Asian crisis hit the world, Indonesia was one of the most vulnerable countries. But the recovery of Indonesia, led by coal sector, led by gas sector, and then steel, palm oil, etc., they became leading export products. And Indonesia utilized it's the biggest strength, as I said before, the population, the large population and the large labor force, into the external sector, so that the export growth was phenomenal after the 1998 Asian crisis. So I think what Indonesia should basically do is they should sustain the path that they have come so far, and ensure that the external sector is not faced with any unforeseen or any disastrous circumstance because of the global recession, and manage the fiscal stimulus and the monetary stimulus programs on a timely manner, and the quantity and the quantity and the volume of these programs are also important. Manage them properly, and so that you can fend off and face any global economic crisis successfully. But the thing is this. It is all about the timing of the implementation of policies. If you don't time the policies properly, one can't predict what will happen, because it's mostly to do with the timing. When you implement the fiscal stimulus, when you decrease the interest rates, basically the timing of the decrease of the interest rates to ensure that the monetary stimulus is given, and then the volume of the monetary stimulus given. What is the to which extent you give that monetary stimulus? These factors would determine whether Indonesia will be able to deal with a crisis, with the already predicted global crisis successfully in 2023.
There's also fears of capital outflow, as you're mentioning, the raising of interest rates. The European Central Bank raises interest rates. The Fed has been raising its interest rates very aggressively. We've seen the rupiah depreciate. We've seen capital outflow from Indonesia. Do you feel that emerging markets and economies in Southeast Asia will be able to deal with the interest rate hikes coming from the US and advanced economies? And will we be able to fend off sort of large-scale capital outflow?
This is the thing. Now, we have to consider this compared to the current state of the Indonesian economy. The Indonesian economy is a sort of a tight economy at this as of now. And when it comes to the global outflows, I think that the global capital outflows that could incur, I think this is a temporary situation, because basically US and Europe, they are trying to fend off inflation. They're trying to control inflation, and that is the main reason why the interest rates hikes are done, so that the monetary stimulus is brought under control. But once this is brought under control, I do not think the same policies would be continued. So with that, I think Indonesia will be able to sustain any implication by making sure that the investment promotions happen successfully, and the red tapes are removed, because one big issue with most of the Southeast Asian countries is that there are many red tapes when it comes to investments, and attracting investments has been a difficult task, especially the foreign investments, and because there should be attractive packages offered to them. Not only that, it is important to make sure that the foreign investors are attracted by ensuring that the bureaucratic processes are simplified. So that is a very important metric that has to be considered. So by doing these soft policies, by implementing these soft policies, I think Indonesia will be able to tackle any major capital outflows resulting from resulting from these interest rate hikes in US. But there is one thing that I need to mention. As I said before, Indonesia has the fourth largest population in the world. So this is the main factor that Indonesia has to utilize and send to battle the global recession, because you can create a high internal demand within the country. So large corporates would be very much attracted to come and come with foreign direct investments and invest in Indonesia because of the great demand, because of the high demand that would be available in Indonesia. So I think these are the factors that Indonesian finance ministry has to consider and ensure the policies are implemented on a timely basis.
Right. Janitha, we're going to take a very short break, but we're going to continue our conversation on fears of a global recession and is Asia or Southeast Asian countries safer from it. Welcome back, and we're still joined by economic analyst joining us from Dubai, Janitha Chitra, and we're talking about concerns of a global recession and is Asia safe from it or not. And I just want to ask you, in terms of a possible global recession next year, what is the most concerning factor, do you feel? And how does it compare to previous economic crisis, for example, the financial crisis in 2008 and the monetary crisis in 1998?
Okay, that's quite interesting because now in 2008, let's take Asia again. Asia's export growth decreased, especially in 2008 fourth quarter, and then the first quarter of 2009 because of the recession in advanced economies and the consequent collapse of the global trade. How the region recovered was basically through massive fiscal monetary stimulus, this massive fiscal and monetary stimulus ensured that the region went into a robust recovery. And we go back, and China also played a major role here because Chinese economy is a giant and was a giant at that time as well. To counter the effects of the rapidly deteriorating economic conditions in late 2008, Chinese authorities took strong and quick action because a huge fiscal stimulus package was given, equivalent to I think 12% GDP in 2008. And then in 1998 also there was this, but that crisis basically again the banking sector dominated crisis, the private sector dominated crisis, and it hit most of the tiger economies in Southeast Asia. But now this crisis, the coming crisis that you asked in 2023, that is different because it is. I think probably we are facing with a similar situation after a very long period of time because the global war to this scale and to this magnitude has not happened very recently. So this is a Euro war. This is a war in the Europe, and this is having a major impact on the commodity sector, especially commodities like wheat. And the trade of wheat and the demand for wheat getting affected a lot because most of the wheat is cultivated in Ukrainian lands. I think Ukraine is one of the largest wheat producers globally, and producers and exporters. So this is having an impact on certain commodities, but not the entire. I wouldn't say that this has a pervasive impact on the entire globe. So this is, and since Europe is involved with the war, since UK is involved with the war, since Russia is involved, US is involved, so this is having a predominant impact in the world. And IMF and World Bank would forecast a recession based on this, and a recession based on the policies that have been implemented to overcome the COVID-based economic crisis that happened, that is continuing to have an impact on the world. So, but this is the thing. So this is how these are the two crises are different. So the past and present and the future.
Right, so it has more to do with commodities. Of course, Russia-Ukraine conflict is having a wide-scale impact, as you mentioned there. Janitra Charif joining us from Dubai, economic analyst. Thank you so much for your